On October 3rd, the UFC's light heavyweight title is up for grabs as newly crowned king Daniel Cormier puts his belt on the line against Swedish superstar Alexander Gustafsson.
This is gonna get crazy!
Plus, former welterweight champion Johny Hendricks is back in action against surging contender Tyron Woodley in the title eliminator bout.
This is a dogfight, man.
UFC 192, October 3rd, only on pay-per-view.
Welcome to another edition of Bookie Beatdown, your one-stop shop for all the analysis, advice, and predictions you need to make money in the world of mixed martial arts gambling. I'm Paul Shaughnessy, joined as always by Cody Saptic. How's it going, man?
Yeah, getting away from the fight nights and going to the pay-per-views. And this is one heck of a pay-per-view.
Yeah, top to bottom, we've got some great fights, so we might as well get right into it. UFC 192 goes down this Saturday night from the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas. In the main event, the light heavyweight championship of the world is on the line between Daniel Cormier and Alexander Gustafsson. Daniel Cormier is a minus 340 favorite with the comeback. On the Mauler, Alexander Gustafsson plus 280. I'm just going to throw it over to you. Who do you like in this fight?
Well, openly, I do like Daniel Cormier. I think styles make fights. His style happens to match up a little better against Alexander Gustafsson. Also, if you're Gustafsson, you've kind of had a couple tough times recently with the injuries, with the losing to Anthony Johnson, with people in the media calling you out and you having to defend yourself and all this and that. If you're Daniel Cormier, you've been kind of on a path of like victory here. Yes, you pick up the title. Yes, he didn't beat Jon Jones. But at the same time, I think his confidence is a lot higher here, and I think that his wrestling pedigree will help him get this fight to the floor, which is ultimately his path to victory. However, minus 340, I don't like that line whatsoever. Alexander Gustafsson is not a chump, and that's the kind of line that this is representing here. This is a title fight for a reason. This is a guy a lot of people think he beat Jon Jones, and he's got the goods. He's a decent wrestler in his own right, but his takedown defense is pretty good. His takedown offense, he's not going to take down Daniel Cormier, so let's throw that out the window. His striking has to be better. His cardio is good. He's been 5 rounds before. He's got the type of goods to potentially win this fight, and for that reason, I would avoid the line and kind of get away from this one. But I mean, in a straight-up pick-em type situation, I like Daniel Cormier. But once again, not really seeing the value in this one.
And you look at another common opponent that they both had, Anthony Rumble Johnson, where obviously Gustafsson, he got caught, he got finished in that fight. But it's not really all that different from Cormier getting caught. He just was able to recover in time in that first round, and I believe in the second round as well. He got dropped twice in that fight. Kudos to Daniel Cormier. He was able to survive it, but Robin Black was saying on 5 rounds earlier today that what's the major difference there? Maybe it's the Johnson strike an inch over to the left, or maybe he hit him just a little bit harder. Like it's. When you're dealing with somebody like Anthony Rumble Johnson, he can turn out anybody's lights on any given night. So I don't think Gustafsson should be criticized too much for this. I'm with you that I like Daniel Cormier to get the job done in this fight. But yeah, minus 340, a little bit crazy to me. Talking about Gustafsson's wrestling ability, in that fight against Jon Jones, he was able to take down Jon Jones himself, and he wasn't really taken down by Jon Jones. There's rumors that went around that Jon Jones wasn't taking that fight too seriously for UFC 165 when he took on Alexander Gustafsson, but rumors are rumors, and we can only deal with the facts and what we see in front of us. I think Cormier has what it takes to get it done. I think this is a close fight, and I hate the line, so it's a 100% pass for me.
Well, I actually buy into the whole that Jon Jones didn't take. This is really the mark on Alexander Gustafsson. He's a very talented fighter. People do like him. He has good fan support. I love all that stuff about him. But really, his high water mark is that Jon Jones fight. And I agree. I don't think Jon Jones got up for that. And I say that because it wasn't like Alexander Gustafsson had worked his way straight to the title shot. He was in contention. He had an opponent fall through, and they were just like, just take the Jon Jones fight. Jon Jones didn't know who this guy was. Didn't see him as a threat, and didn't think he's had good wrestling. So in fact, he probably doesn't train his wrestling for the camp. He probably, I don't want to say half-asses it, but probably doesn't put his best effort forward. And as a result, you got Gustafsson comes in. He clearly trained the greatest camp of his life. He wants to win the title. He's highly motivated, and he's able to take advantage of that. But I mean, I was at that fight live, and honestly, I thought it was 4 rounds to 1 Jon Jones, no questions asked. I don't think it was a robbery. I don't think Gustafsson won. I don't even think Gustafsson won 2 rounds. So when I watch the fight, I'm seeing something different than other people are seeing. If you're a Gustafsson fan or you're a Jon Jones hater, you can rally behind it all you want. But it wasn't this great, impressive performance that everyone keeps talking about. And ever since that fight, that's all people keep talking about. But listen, Gustafsson's the guy that pulled out of the rematch. Gustafsson's the guy that, if things happen and he's the one getting out of it, he's been hurt. He didn't look good against Anthony Johnson. The fight against Jimmy Manuwa, it is what it is, I guess. But
are you talking yourself into a Cormier bet here? Is that what's happening?
No, because the line's no good here. It really isn't. This is a pass fight.
Yeah.
I think it's going to go the distance, so maybe try to get Cormier by 5-round decision.
Or just find the over.
Yeah, but we've seen with light heavyweight fights, they're big guys. Anything can happen. Both guys have shown off power in the past, and quite frankly, in a 5-round fight, do I want to bet that it's going to go the distance? I don't know. I'd have to see the value on that. But when I look at it, minus 340, it seems like the bookies and the odds makers are fanning Alexander Gustafsson. Similar to I'm saying he's not as impressive as people might think he is. The bookies have taken that same approach. And this is MMA. On any given night, he can come in and have that great performance. If it was better line, yeah, I think I'd go Cormier. But because it's minus 340, I don't see the value in it. I'm not going to count Gustafsson out. I would probably have to avoid this fight.
Just one last thing on on people that John Jones wasn't taking Gustafsson seriously going into his fight. John Jones was doing cocaine less than a month before his fight with Daniel Cormier. So you can make the same argument that he wasn't taking Daniel Cormier seriously. Maybe he hasn't taken anybody seriously in a long time. So that just shows how good John Jones is all around. Anyway, let's move on to the co-main event where we have Johnny Big Rig Hendricks taking on Tyron, the chosen one, Woodley. Johnny Hendricks is a minus 320 favorite with the comeback on Woodley. Plus 260. Who do you like?
Well, this one scares me because it could be just a complete snooze fest. And I mean that not in a positive way. I mean, both guys kind of have similar styles. They both have a good amount of punching power. I mean, you'd have to give the advantage in that realm to Johnny Hendricks. But Tyron Woodley, no slouch. He hits extremely hard. Both guys good wrestlers. Once again, you'd have to give the advantage to Johnny Hendricks. But this is MMA wrestling. This is not collegiate wrestling. I mean, Tyron Woodley can stuff these takedowns, keep the fight standing. And then cardio aspect, I'm kind of leaning Tyron Woodley. I mean, Johnny Hendricks known to balloon up during fights, but how many times have you thought to yourself, wow, Johnny Hendricks is completely gassed right now? Maybe in the 5th round against Robbie Lawler. The first time, he pulled it out hard in that 5th round. Second time, he looked a little bit fatigued, sure, but that's a 5-round fight against the current champion of the world. So both guys match up extremely good against each other. The problem is when Tyron Woodley fights upper echelon competition, he goes gun shy. He doesn't throw his punches. He doesn't really use his wrestling. I want to liken this fight to almost like the Kelvin Gastelum fight, where he won a split decision that I thought he won. A lot of people didn't think he won. But the fact of the matter is you've got a good guy in front of you who has decent striking, who has good wrestling, and then he just doesn't pull the trigger on that. And that's not the first time we've seen Woodley do that against opponents. He does that the odd time, like Jake Shields, similar situation. So if he's got a huge advantage over you in the striking department or the wrestling department, he'll take advantage of that and he'll beat you. If you are similar to him in those two departments, then he doesn't go for it. And I think that's going to happen in this Johnny Hendricks fight. The flip side to that, though, is we've seen with Johnny Hendricks in his recent performance, maybe like that Matt Brown fight, is that he's kind of over-relying too much on his wrestling. He's kind of getting away from the things that got him to where he is. And I think ballooning up between fights is not helping him. So this is a pretty close fight, to be honest with you.
I think with that fight against Matt Brown, in his mind, he goes, I'm going to get the next title shot. All I have to do is get through Matt Brown. Now, it didn't work out for that
because he played
him.
it so safe. I mean, it's a poor thinking process.
I suppose you can say that, but a lot of the times you just have to get the win. If you think you're in that spot, you're going to play it safe. What's the best thing to do against a guy like Matt Brown? It's not to get into a firefight with a guy like Matt Brown. You hurt Matt Brown, and he's coming guns a-blazing at you, almost 10 times harder than
before he was hurt.
Exactly, you know? So that's just being smart, in my opinion. Now, Johnny Hendricks, the big difference in this fight, and maybe Woodley will prove me wrong, but Johnny Hendricks is a game day performer typically. And Tyron Woodley, as you were kind of alluding to earlier on, is a guy who kind of clams up in these types of moments. I think Johnny Hendricks gets the win, minus 320. I do not like the line here. You know, these guys have the history of wrestling against each other in college. Johnny won, but it was based on whether or not Tyron Woodley bit him. Or I don't want to get into all of that. Long story short, on paper, it seems like this would turn into a stand-up war between two guys. I'm going to go with the guy who probably is less gun-shy, a guy who seems to be on the right track in terms of his nutrition, and I'm going to go with Johnny Hendricks, minus 320. The line's a little bit crazy, though. Maybe check it out by decision. I think this will probably go to decision, but both of these guys hit pretty hard. There's a lot of question marks on this, but Johnny Hendricks by decision. If you put a gun to my head, that would be my call on this fight.
Yeah, you know what? The line, once again, is what's, pushing me away from this. I don't want to take a page out of your book here, but it's almost a dog or pass to me. And I do say that because Johnny Hendricks is not a spring chicken anymore, man. And we used to watch him back in 2010, 2011, and he's blasting guys, and his wrestling's good and his striking's good. He always balloons up between fights. You always see him, and he's real fat. And I know he's got his nutritionist now. He's also got a steakhouse now. And I don't know that. I think as time goes on. I remember my dad used to be like, I think he's on the gas. I'm like, what do you mean he's on the gas? Look at him. He's not this ripped guy. He's natural. Look, to me, he looks natural. And I think because he's natural, the older he's gotten, it's taken away from his explosiveness, it's taken away from his speed, it's taken away from his cardio. I agree. He's the game day performance here. Tyron Woodley isn't. But this line is not a good line.
No.
This is completely buying into the Texas fighter being in Texas, and maybe that's the case. Maybe he'll get some home cooking. Maybe he'll be better because he's at home. Whole bunch of things. But I don't like the line. And I'm not one to pass on back-to-back fights, but there's no value here.
Well, you said dogger pass.
Yes, that's why, because I don't want to pass 2 in a row.
Cody with a Paul Shaughnessy special here in the main event. We both think that Daniel Cormier got it done, but we didn't like the line of minus 340. Cody's pulling off Paul Shaughnessy by saying dogger pass. I'm just passing on this line. But I promise there are a lot more fights coming up that we will like the line. We will be advising you to make bets on, so stick around for more Bookie Beatdown. Welcome back to Bookie Beatdown. Paul Shaughnessy and Cody Saftik here with you. All right, off we go to the light heavyweight division where maybe a number 1 contender fight.
Ooh.
Rashad Evans is a minus 160 favorite. The comeback on Ryan Bader plus 140. Who do you like, man?
Well, I had an interesting thought about this fight earlier on the week, and I was like, oh, wow, Rashad's back. That's going to be good times. And I'm looking at the line. I'm like, wow, Rashad's not even that big of a favorite. Wow, that's not bad. But who do I like? I think I'm leaning towards Ryan Bader. I mean, you really have to factor in the fact that Rashad Evans has been off for 2 years. That's a long time. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're getting the same Rashad that you remember. This guy's a different guy at this point. Then think about what he looked like 2 years ago when you saw him. He looked like death against Nogueira in a fight that he lost. He looked like death against Dan Henderson in a fight that was a split decision. One judge ringside thought Dan Henderson won, and I don't even disagree with that, to be honest with you. He's lost his killer instinct. He doesn't go for it anymore, and I think that knee injuries really hurt him. I mean, this is a guy that's a wrestler who's known for his explosiveness. Mm-hmm. That's always been the mark on him, is the fact that, wow, this guy's an actual good athlete in a sport where a lot of guys are just tough. This guy's tough and an athlete. But I think he's lost a lot of that. He's getting older now, and I think that life changes. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, trying to cut his teeth in the scene, then he's working hard. Then he wins the Ultimate Fighter, then he becomes the UFC champion. That's all working your way up to the top, and then since then, it's actually just been a downhill slide for him. And I like Rashad Evans. He's a very fun fighter to watch. He's the kind of person that you like, and he's the kind of person, if you're a casual fan, you recognize the name, you put the money on him. But if you want to just look at it for what it is, you got one guy who's clearly not fighting the best fights of his career 2 years ago, and now
and then hasn't fought since then.
And he's got a full-time teaching gig. He's getting other guys ready.
Not just that,
his eyes messed up.
He looked really haggard in this one feature I saw on like Ultimate Insider or whatever. But on top of that,
he's banged up, man.
He's been he actually moved management companies. He was with Glenn Robinson and the Black Zillions for their management team, and then now he's moved on to GSP's old management team, which is weird because he's still training at the gym.
That's really weird. That's really weird.
There's kind of, it just seems like there would be a lot of drama probably if, a guy who's kind of the captain of that Black Zillions team leaves the management side of things. I don't know. Too many questions around him. I hate to agree with you, but yeah, I think Bader's a guy who every single fight gets better. If on paper, this is very similar to the Hendricks versus Woodley fight, where it's like two really good wrestlers coming up against each other. If it ends up in a striking match, old Rashad Evans would probably beat him on the feet.
Yes.
I'm not convinced that he's going to be able to stop Ryan Bader's takedowns, though.
Oh, I see.
Especially when you've been off for this long, you have problems with your knees. So I am actually going with Ryan Bader as my pick in this fight as well.
Yeah, I am actually. And you know what? I don't think it's necessarily the takedown. I think Bader gets the takedown. I think Bader just moves forward, and then that type of aggression, let's face it, he's going to, face ring rust. That's a long time off. He's going to have that ring rust. 2, he's going to have cardio issues because he's an older fighter now. Because of that knee injury, he hasn't been keeping in phenomenal shape all this time. So I think Ryan Bader most definitely has the tools to pull this one out. It's a close fight, don't get me wrong, but I'm leaning towards Darth Bader.
All right, let's move on to the heavyweight division where we have Ruslan Magomedov taking on Sean Jordan. Ruslan Magomedov's a minus 155 favorite with the comeback on Jordan plus 135. I'm going to go with Ruslan Magomedov in this spot. Am I confident in it? No, these are kind of middling heavyweights. You've heard me talk about middling heavyweights many a times before.
Dangerous.
Ruslan Magomedov, what we have seen from him, and maybe it hasn't been against the highest level of competition, but it's an ability to move around and not get hit. Now, he may not have the most exciting style, and one day somebody's probably going to catch him. I don't know if Sean Jordan's quick enough to get it done. He's a great athlete, don't get me wrong. His body type doesn't look like he would be as athletic as he is.
Backflip.
But minus 155, I suppose I would lean towards Ruslan Magomedov. This is not one that I'm going to be throwing tons of juice at, though. What about you?
I wouldn't throw tons of money either because not only are they middling heavyweights, but they're heavyweights, and we know that anything can happen here. But what I'd like to say is if you're Sean Jordan, this is a guy that a couple fights ago, he was basically written off. At least it was like, he just got smoked out here. You know what? He's an athlete, but he's clearly, letting himself go a little bit. No, he's moving from Greg Jackson's out to American Top Team, but he's rebuilt himself since then. 3 finishes in a row. Sorry, 3
against
big wins.
Who, though?
I get that, but he's starting to get himself back in the groove. He's got his confidence back. He seems to be in decent shape. His cardio's good. And what he's doing now is he's mixing up his wrestling and his striking, and that's going to help him out a lot. Magomedov, this goes back to his time in Russia, because if you look at him just strictly for his UFC run, he beats Victor Pesta, who wasn't really much going into that fight, and then his next fight is Josh Copeland, the Cuddly Bear.
Cuddly Bear,
and he went
maybe a less mobile Sean Jordan.
He went the distance with both of those guys, right? And then prior to coming to the UFC, he was one of those Russian fighters that they would bring in guys like Rico Rodriguez, who had nothing to offer him, but had a name. And he would just beat those guys. And it wasn't particularly finishing these guys either. So he's someone who's been spoon-fed, who hasn't been tested yet. He probably passes this fight. I don't know, probably is a little hard, but he might be able to get past this fight. But this is the first real time in his career where it's like, well, Sean Jordan's not bad, man.
Yeah, he's a top 20 guy.
He's like a gatekeeper of the division. And we've seen with some of these Russian fighters that they cruise for a certain level, and then when they get to a certain level, it's like, oh, man, I got exploited hard here. Exactly. And I'm thinking Sean Jordan, I've really been impressed with him in the last couple fights. He's going to get his wrestling going here. He needs to get his wrestling going here, I should say. And it's going to be a battle of attrition. And I've been a little more impressed with his, cardio lately that I'm basically betting against the unknown. So my advice for this fight would be pass it all together. The line's pretty close for a reason. It's a close fight. Or maybe small action on Sean Jordan. But I'm not fully sold on Magomedov quite yet.
And finally, we move to the women's bantamweight division, where we have Juliana Pena taking on Jessica Evil Eye. Juliana Pena is a minus 245 favorite with the comeback on Eye plus 205. I think this line is nuts.
Nuts.
Absolutely nuts. When I knew that this fight was booked a ways back, I thought it was going to be relatively close to a pick'em. Maybe they would give Pena the slight edge. It'd be like a minus 135 plus 115 kind of situation.
Yeah.
At this, though, this doesn't make any sense. Now, I realize that Juliana Pena, training partners with Miesha Tate. Miesha Tate's coming off of a win, but Miesha Tate used her striking a lot in that fight, and she was able to drop Jessica Eye. We haven't seen anything from Juliana Pena to know that her striking's even on that level at this point. What we know is that she can take down really low-level competition in Jessica Rakoczy and Milana Dudieva. Like maybe two of the Rakoczy moved down to 115 afterwards, a boxer, and Dudieva had the shortest reach out of any fighter, and was just another striker as well.
Yeah.
Jessica Evil Eye's got some good takedown defense. If she keeps it on the feet, I think she's going to exploit Pena here. This is kind of another situation where you have somebody moving up the ranks, and I think Jessica Eye is a lot tougher than the bookies are obviously giving credit. So give me Jessica Evil Eye at plus 205.
Yeah, obviously they're not giving her good lines at all. I mean, that's definitely something to think about. It's like, well, why is she such a big underdog?
I'm surprised.
And
unless they know something I don't.
Well, I don't know. I keep thinking back to the fact that Jessica Eye was being considered for a title shot, and then she goes into this Miesha Tate fight. She dropped Miesha Tate. I mean, it wasn't like it was a complete beating. Rounds 2 and 3 was a bit of a beating, but it wasn't like it was a complete blowout. And then as a result, it's like, well, now you're a big underdog against a girl who hasn't really proved
Miesha's
herself.
probably the second best woman in the world.
Yeah, and this girl was competitive against her. And I think against Jessica Eye, I was really impressed with the things that she was saying prior to the Miesha Tate fight. She's like, I will not lose this fight. I am training so hard for this. I want this so bad. I'm not going to let this moment escape me. And you know what? The moment escaped you. But I would like to think that she's still got that fire, and she's like, okay, I can't lose 2 in a row. I lost to Tate. Tate's probably the second best girl in the world. I need to keep going from here, go up and up and up. So I would assume that she's motivated. It's a bit of a quick turnaround for her, but she's motivated. She's got the tools to win this fight. Dog or pass, really. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Plus, you're getting a good line on her, to be honest with you. I mean, it's pretty sizable. Right. I mean, that's pretty good.
All right, to break it all down, we got both Cody and I like Ryan Darth Bader to get the job done against Rashad Evans. kind of a dog or pass situation there, just because we haven't seen Evans in so long, and we wonder where he is at this point in his career. We were kind of split on Ruslan Magomedov versus Sean Jordan. Kind of a pass situation. Both of us were kind of edging towards the opposite spectrums there. Obviously, a pretty close fight when the line set up that way. And we both like the dog, Jessica Evil Eye, at plus 205 to get the job done against Juliana Pena. Stick around, more Bookie Beatdown coming right up. Welcome back to Bookie Beatdown. Paul Shaughnessy and Cody Saftik here with you. All right, we're just about out of time, but before we go, we have to give you our picks of the week for UFC 192, so why don't you get us started?
Okay, so in terms of if you're a Rashad fan or if you're a Bader fan, that shouldn't matter. I really think this fight's just going to go the distance. You got Rashad, lots of ring rust on him. He's going to have to be a little bit tentative. Bader, he's got the goods to finish, but Rashad is notoriously hard to put away. So the value of this fight just simply going the distance is minus 200, and that's not bad at all. It really isn't. But if you did favor yourself a Bader fan, then Bader, who's already the underdog, him winning a decision is like plus 215. So you can get some additional value. But if you like either guy, I just really think that this fight's going the distance. So that would be the one for me to keep my eye on.
And speaking of keeping your eye on things, I'm going with Jessica Evil Eye. Now, I know Juliana Pena has been rising the ranks, but is he against maybe the lowest level competition at the women's bantamweight division? She got through the house, but really, who came out of that house and has looked good in the women's bantamweight division? So, Jessica Evil Eye, perennial top 10 since she came into the division. I think the bookies made a mistake on this line. It's plus 205, Jessica Evil Eye. Am I 100% sure it's going to happen? Well, no, because she's a dog for a reason.
Of course.
But if you want to live even more dangerously than that, you go Jessica Eye by decision plus 350.
Oh, I don't know if that's lock of the week, but that might be value of the week. That's pretty good, actually.
So your pick of the week is just for it to go decision between Bader and Evans. Mine is Jessica Evil Eye, or if you like to live dangerously, Jessica Evil Eye by decision. That is officially all the time that we have for now. I want to thank Director Arab for doing all the sweet cuts behind the glass. I want to thank Cody Saftik breaking down the fights with me. For both those guys, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck. Welcome back to Bookie Beatdown Bonus Edition. Always our favorite. Let's get right back into it then. We got Joseph Benavidez taking on Ali Bagatinov. Joseph Benavidez is a minus 335 favorite with the comeback on Bagatinov, plus 275. Interesting. A note on this fight is, what's Bagatinov going to be like when he's off his special sauce?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question, though.
That is the real question here. It wasn't steroids. It was EPO, which is what, like...
Oh, well, sorry, Paul. Hey, I guess he's just blood doping. It's not that big of a deal.
All I'm saying is if I have to fight Demetrius Johnson, and I know that his work rate is far superior to anything I could ever put out, maybe I take a little EPO as well. But this line is pretty steep, to be perfectly honest. Joseph Benavidez is one of these guys who's in a spot that he's probably the second best or maybe the third best guy in that division. He's going to have to beat a bunch of guys like Ali Bagatinov to ever get...
He's not getting another one.
He may not get another one. He may have to wait for Demetrius Johnson to move up to 135, and then it would be him versus Dodson to see who takes that spot, right? Those are the two guys. They've never fought against each other, and maybe the UFC, there's a reason that hasn't happened because they're waiting for Demetrius to move on. And then... Obviously, though they would be the guys that I would say on paper, at least right now. Yeah. There's guys like Cejudo that could maybe work themselves into that position and yada, yada, yada. But yeah, this is, I would lean towards Benavidez, but I'm not going to lie. It's kind of intriguing, plus 275 on Bagatinov in this spot as well. This is a guy who got a title shot. He looked good along the way. He's a combat sambo guy. You know, Benavidez, one of his number one things that he always likes to go to is that guillotine choke. And I don't know if Bagatinov's going to end up in that type of spot in this fight. It may remain on the feet. Bagatinov looks like no slouch up there. I think this fight is a little bit closer than the line would suggest. I'm probably not going to lay any juice on it, but if I were to lay any juice, it would be a dog or pass situation. I would go with Puncher King, Ali Bagatinov.
Yeah, I'm feeling it too. You know what? There's trends on this card. The trend is being like, I like Daniel Cormier, but I don't like him for minus 340.
Yeah.
I like Johny Hendricks, but I don't like him for minus 320. And this is the same situation here. You got Joseph Benavidez, who you kind of favor only because experience, only because you do
You've
believe.
seen him multiple fights against the top level guys.
Always the top level guys.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, we know he's the number 2 or 3 ranked guy in the world at Flyweight. We know that. I mean, he's proven it. He's got the goods, and he's a very tough guy. I'm not going to take anything away from him. But we also know exactly what we're getting from him. Against Ali Bagatinov, he's been off this year for the suspension, so we don't really know what we're getting back out of him. And like I was basically crapping on Rashad Evans and being like, you don't know what you're going to get out of him. He's an older fighter. Ali Bagatinov is not an older fighter, so the time off might have been good for him, you know? Maybe he's been working on different things in the gym. Maybe he's been trying
Working on his cardio so he doesn't have to take EPO.
It's only a 3-round fight. So maybe he's just like, I don't even need the EPO. I had a buddy who was on EPO, and it did wonders for him, man. He was in great shape.
Lance Armstrong was on EPO a lot as well.
Yeah,
which,
and I was just like, damn.
Did pretty well for him until he got caught.
Wouldn't want to fight this guy. When he wasn't on, he was still ripped, don't get me wrong, but it was just like his performance is taken up a level. Now, that could be a lot of things. Maybe Bagatinov's got low self-confidence, and he's like, I need that extra little step in it. Regardless, I mean, just look at the fight against John Lineker. If he's on, and he can do wonderful things. And against Joseph Benavidez, I always wonder, Joseph, another fighter who's getting older, but he's in a situation whereas look at him at Team Alpha Male, and it's like, okay, well, it's all about TJ Dillashaw now, guys. It's like, okay, and it's all about Chad Mendes and it's all about Uriah Faber. And then we got our younger guys coming up, and it's Cody Garbrandt and Andre Feely, and we got Paige Van Zandt, we got, and then we got this whole coaching debacle, and Dwayne Ludwig saying this, and then he's going out, and and what are we gonna do? And then we don't have a striking coach. We got Martin Kamen. No, Martin Kamen's wife hates Sacramento. Like, that's a lot of stress. But what didn't get factored in there is Joseph Benavidez. He's like written off almost essentially. Him and Danny Castillo are not really getting the attention that they maybe should because there's just so many moving parts now happening with Team Alpha Male. And I don't know what that's really affected in his confidence. And one important thing to note is when Uriah Faber and Dwayne Ludwig were kind of getting on this back and forth I don't want to say Twitter tirade, but just basically exchanging shots back and forth is the most notable thing I took from that interview on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani is Ariel Helwani's like, well, do you guys have a striking coach right now? And then Uriah's like,
Master Tong's there sometimes.
Master Tong, but he's just really busy. Justin Buckles. Like, don't tell me Justin Buckles is the new striking coach, pal. Give your head a shake. What else do you got going here? Well, we got like Two Guns JJ from New Mexico.
But he only
Cody Garbrandt's guy.
Yeah,
It's
who comes in to help out Cody Garbrandt, maybe not the rest of the team.
So then Ariel Helwani's like, so you don't have a striking coach? He's like, no, well, Martin Kampman said he's going to still come back once in a while. It's like, okay, let me decipher all that crap that just came out of his mouth. No, they don't have a striking coach. And really, when they were on that roll a little while ago, it seemed to be, well, these are good wrestlers, and now they're throwing in the striking in the mix. Like, that was kind of completing the full package. But now it's like, don't have a striking coach. Faber's getting in this fight with this person. Dillashaw and Dan Castillo, well, they're flying down to Colorado to train with Ludwig, and I got this going on. And if you're Joseph Benavidez, you're a flyweight, right? There's not a whole lot of flyweights to work with to begin with, but also you're just an aging veteran now. You're not someone that people are giving every, moment of their attention and being like, wow, he's challenging for a title. We need to help him get ready. He's just kind of flying by the wayside. And do I think he's going to get the win? Certainly a possibility. But for that value, no dice. So the trend is that they're overvaluing these guys that just have big names. But my trend is dog or pass, to be honest with you, because that's where the real value stays. So not huge on this fight, but leaning towards Bagatinov.
All right, let's move on to the featherweight division where we have Yair Rodriguez taking on Daniel Hooker. Yair Rodriguez is a minus 245 or 275 favorite with the comeback on Hooker plus 235. I think this is just like an interesting setup by the UFC.
You think a setup?
I think it's a setup for Rodriguez. They saw that this guy's got star qualities when he fought in Mexico against Charles Rosa.
Yeah.
I think this is a step down in competition to Daniel Hooker, who has been good in certain fights, but the one fight that really sticks out to me is a loss to Maximo Blanco. What's
Sure.
Maximo Blanco? An aggressive striker who's going to constantly pressure you.
He's a freak athlete, though. Like, that guy's intense.
Who else is a freak athlete and and
has a Reebok deal already?
And is going to constantly keep moving in your face and has like a wild kind of striking style? Yair Rodriguez. So I think this is a fight that's set up for Rodriguez to win. Anything can happen. We're coming off of Gegard Mousasi losing to one won Uriah Hall this past weekend. So we know anything can happen, but I think this is a setup for Rodriguez. They want to build this guy up a little bit. Charles Rosa is a really legit guy, and he dominated Rosa for at least 2 of the 3 rounds in that fight. It was a really awesome fight all around, but I think this is actually a slight step down against Daniel Hooker, who's going to kind of even out. So yeah, minus 275. The price isn't great. I'm going to be more focusing on Rodriguez in counter move and DraftKings, but maybe avoid the minus 275. But I do think he gets the job done. Maybe you can add him to a parlay here or there.
Yeah, I actually hate this fight because as a fan, I love this fight. This is going to be good times. But as an MMA mark, I think Hooker has so much more to offer the sport, and he's a good prospect. And Yair Rodriguez is a great prospect as well. And I don't really want to see 2 prospects square off at this point. I'm really big up on Daniel Hooker, the hangman. I think he's got the goods. He's ultra aggressive. His chin is cast iron. He keeps coming forward. He finds ways to win. And I mean, look at that performance against Hatsuki Aoki. He really showed me that, he's developing into the complete package, and he's still a really young guy. We bet against Yair Rodriguez. We thought, Charles Rosa is someone who's already kind of established, who is also rising up the ranks, and Yair Rodriguez, maybe this is just one of those tough Latin America guys that's never going to pan out. But you know what? He did pan out. He was really good. And now I'm left with an opportunity, I'm left with a situation where it's like, I know both guys are headed towards, near the top. Both guys are headed towards that top 10 in the division. But I do agree Yair Rodriguez is maybe a step above that. And then that's the thing. When you look at Daniel Hooker, he's not the greatest athlete. He's tall and he's lanky. And when he's up against guys that kind of have that extra gear in them, then maybe that's where he has trouble. But most notably that Maximo Blanco fight, which funny enough, right, because he gets this massive cut on his head. And I mean massive. And I forget what website it was, but I remember reading the headline. It was like, Hooker beaten, left with a bloody gash. I was like, that's poor journalism. like what a headline.
It's great. It's great journalism.
Yeah, that's just stupid though. But honestly,
somebody got a giggle out of that.
Honestly, I really like Daniel Hooker, and if he was against most opponents that were still green, working their way up, I would pick Daniel Hooker. But man, Yair Rodriguez, he does seem to have the goods, so I don't really want to make that mistake twice. I want to say pass, but my heart's telling me to put the money on Yair Rodriguez.
All right, let's move on. We've got Albert Tumanov taking on Alan Jouban. Albert Tumanov is a minus 220 favorite with the comeback on Jouban, plus 180. Who do you like?
Yeah, I'm going to give you my spoiler for pick of the week right now. I like Tumanov big time. I mean, he's a precision striker. And precision strikers, they're good against, they're going to fight against other guys who are also strikers. We're not necessarily taking them down. We've seen with Tumanov, if you try to take him down, you try to grapple with him, he's good, not great. But if you stand at bay with him, or you even just stand with him, he's going to completely take you out. Master of sport in boxing in his native Russia, and a complete package standing in that he can throw punches, he can throw the kicks, he is calm, his cardio seems to check out, he's fast, he's got power, he's got all this stuff. Jouban's a talented fighter as well, don't get me wrong, but Jouban's issue is that he stands with guys as well, and he's a little bit loopy, and he gets hit in his fights. I mean, let's just look at his last performance,
That's
right?
what I was going to say. That fight against Matt Dwyer, if he gets hit like that, and he got dropped hard.
Dropped. You were thinking he was out. You're yelling at the TV he is out.
I had money on Jouban, and I still do think that he was out. He was out for a very slight second there, and then he was woken up on a strike on the ground that Matt Dwyer landed on. And we were really hard on Matt Dwyer in the past, but
yeah, well, you know who Dwyer got smoked out against in 30 seconds? Albert Tumanov.
I know.
Kicked him in the head and folded him.
What I'm saying is that if Jouban gets hit like that against Albert Tumanov,
he's going to, is what I'm thinking.
It's night-night.
Listen, this is
night,
not
night.
even...
You're not going to recover.
This is not even just a case where Alan Jouban got hit by Matt Dwyer, who's 6'4", who's really long, and he got wobbled. Look at his UFC debut against Seth Baczynski. Yeah. He gets hurt big time.
He's a fun fighter to watch, but but his striking defense is definitely pretty low, and that's going to hurt him against Tumanov. I agree with you.
I couldn't agree more. Honestly, I think that's the mark on him. I think because he's a little bit loopy, and he has the ability to sustain punches and kind of recover, but at the same time, we've seen him get hurt. If he goes in there and he tries to exchange some shots to Tumanov's faster, he's crisper, and he's not going to let him off the hook. If he hurts him, he's going to go for the kill. I like Alan Jouban. The guy's a model. How could you not like him? Funny, good-looking dude, puts on exciting fights. Mm-hmm. There's nothing not to like in Alan Jouban. But boy, oh boy, he ain't going back to that modeling career after this one, because I think he's in for a bad beating against Albert Tumanov.
All right, let's move on to the women's strawweight division, where we have Rose Namajunas taking on Angela Hill. Namajunas is a minus 265 favorite with the comeback on Hill, plus 225. I think Namajunas is going to get the job done here. And I don't even think the line's actually all that bad. Namajunas took a whole bunch of time off after losing to Carla Esparza. I think she's been kind of rebuilding her game. Maybe not. But the big disparity here is the ground game.
Sure.
And, Angela Hill was taken down consistently by Tisha Torres. Tisha Torres does not come from a wrestling background. I think
she's jacked, man.
Namajunas is going to get this fight to the ground. I'm not thinking like just straight up wrestling, but somehow she's going to get this fight to the ground. When she does, she's going to do what she did on the Ultimate Fighter House, which is find a submission and lock it up, finish it off. So counter move, DraftKings, Namajunas is going to be on my teams. I think she gets the job done at minus 265 as well. If the line starts creeping up even further, I'd maybe just pass. But as it stands right now, I like Namajunas. I think she's going to win by submission. Maybe Namajunas by submission, depending on what the line is on that prop. Make sure you can always ask me and Cody what we think about it. Cody's Twitter is at CJ Safdie. Mine is at Paul Shag, and we'll tell you what we think about the value of the line. But yeah, Namajunas by submission, I think, is how I see this fight playing out.
Yeah, you know what? This is another fight for me that I would look to pass because of the size of the line, and I don't like that line. If you look at Angela Hill, she's very green still, but she's somebody who comes from a Muay Thai background, who's strong, who has good striking abilities. If you look at her fight in the Ultimate Fighter House against Carlos Esparza, yeah, she gets out wrestling, she gets choked out by Carlos Esparza. And she's 1-0 at the time, let's factor that in. She didn't really have much experience. Now she moves on to the Ultimate Fighter, she gets a win, and then she gets matched up against Tisha Torres. Tisha Torres comes from a kickboxing background as well, or at least a striking background. And you got Angela Hill from a striking background. And Angela Hill's beating her up standing. That causes Tisha Torres to be like, I need to get this fight to the ground. And you know what? She's able to get the fight to the ground. But if you're Angela Hill and you're Angela Hill's camp, you know opponents want to take you down. You've got the good striking. You've got a credible amateur Muay Thai pedigree. You're a good striker. They don't want to strike with you, Angela. They want to take you down. So I know that's something she's working on. And Rose is not a wrestler in the slightest bit. She might go for a flying armbar as a means to get the fight to the ground. But if Angela plays it smart, gets back up, keeps it standing, you've got her technical striking, her technical Muay Thai, versus Rose's fancy striking. And Rose is a good striker, don't get me wrong. But she prefers to do flashy stuff, whereas Angela Hill's like a meat and potatoes, check the leg kick, give the leg kick, land some punches. If this is a striking battle, I got Angela Hill. If it hits the ground, yeah, I got Rose Namajunas. But for the size of that line, I'm not willing to bet that it even hits the ground.
We've just seen Namajunas be able to do this, even, not necessarily like an Invicta-style flying armbar, but against JoJo Calderwood.
JoJo Calderwood's someone who I don't think was in a good mental place in that house. I mean, she's someone who's very tight with her camp, and even where she's outside of the house, in their own confines of her own home, she seems to have issues getting up for fights. I mean, look at her last two performances where she openly admits against Marina Moroz, she's like, I didn't really get up for this fight. I had some personal issues. And then for her last performance, I mean, virtually the same thing against Corny Casey Sanchez, whatever her name is. But it's basically the same thing. It's just like, well, I couldn't really get up for this fight, but you won. Yeah, it was a good fight. It was very back and forth. So now you got Angela Hill, who, because she has a very, very green record, she doesn't have a whole lot of fights, people are going to write her off. And Rose Namajunas, my baby, beautiful. They recognize the name, they recognize the face, they recognize that, she fought Carla Esparza, and she dominated on The Ultimate Fighter. She has to be an overwhelming favorite. Once again, I might be inclined to bet her if the line was better, but it's not better. I don't like it one bit. So I can kind of feel where you're coming from. She should be the better fighter, but she's been off for a long time. And Angela Hill's someone who she's been exploited. So now that she's been exploited twice in a row, or at least in her two losses, let's fix those holes.
I think she's maybe just too green, though. Too green. She got into this a little bit too late.
We'll have to see on Saturday night because this might be a coming out party or it'll be disastrous.
She didn't even have a professional mixed martial arts fight when she went into the Ultimate Fighter.
Dog, she was 1-0, dog. She was your pick for dark horse of the competition.
Yeah, and she got eliminated in the first round.
Because it was seeded. How are we supposed to know they were going to be seeded? And she would get the number one seed in her first fight. Regardless.
But she is too green in the grappling department. I wouldn't tell anybody to put money on Angela.
She's not a good grappler. Don't get me wrong. Not a good grappler.
Would you tell people to put money on Angela Hill?
Small action, dog or pass, dog.
Dog or pass from Cody Safdie.
Small action, dog or pass.
You're sounding a lot like me this week.
And I don't usually
Cody,
do that.
dog or pass, Safdie.
But you know what? When in Rome.
Let's see if he wants to go with the dog here, where we've got Adriano Martins taking on Islam Makhachev. Adriano Martins, a minus 115 favorite with the comeback on Makhachev, minus 105. Pretty much straight pick 'em. But the dog is Islam Makhachev. Are you going with the dog, Islam Makhachev, in this fight?
Okay, I was. Literally all week I'm thinking, okay, Makhachev, this is a guy that I like. I mean, good grappling prowess. Even
Khabib's boy, or his cousin.
Listen, he's got the goods. He's a good fighter. But then I look at Adriano Martins and I'm like, how many times are you going to write this guy off before eventually you give your head a scratch?
Who's he beat, though? Besides Khabilov. Khabilov, that win was impressive. I'll give him that. But that was a weird night. That was the only favorite that won on that card was Ivan Batman George. Are you kidding me?
Josh Shockley.
It was the first fight of the night, and then 10 straight dogs hit that night. That was just the most weird, strange night. You'll never see anything like that ever again.
He beat up Rustin Khabilov. I don't really care what the judges thought about it. He beat Rustin Khabilov. And then prior to that, I know Darren Cruikshank is completely off the rails, no good anymore. But he looked really good against Cruikshank. He drops Cruikshank.
Who else did he beat? Juan Manuel Puig.
Okay, Puig's is the worst.
Yeah, he knocked him out.
But he did to Puig what you have to do to Puig, and that's completely decimate him, which he did. So this is a guy that, like I said, he's very experienced. He's been around the game for a long time, and he's someone that is getting better. And what he lose to Donald Cerrone in a fight that he was pretty competitive in.
It wasn't competitive. He got KO'd real quick.
Sure, but it like the Edson Barboza fight. He was doing good until he got iced. It just happened to be really
Until he ate
quick.
A shin right to his, gnawing on the shin.
This is Donald Cerrone, dog. So honestly, I do think Makhachev could win this fight. Don't get me wrong. I think if it's going to be a grappling, accentuated fight, then yeah, sure, he could have the goods. But against Adrian Martins, I would just have to assume that the win over Rustam Khabilov is very similar to this Makhachev fight. You've got a big, strong, durable guy who's going to try to out-grapple you, and you're able to use your grappling, you're able to use your cardio, you're able to use your veteran ringmanship and get the win. And you know what? It's a pretty close fight. I'm leaning towards Adrian Martins, but if you just want to pass on this fight, it wouldn't be the worst call ever.
I'm going with Makhachev.
Nice. Okay.
It's Khabib's boy.
Fair enough.
It's Khabib's boy. Those guys know how to win. They know how to keep themselves out of dangerous areas. They know how to grapple or take you down and just ride your back. What's that?
Didn't he beat Khabib's brother too?
Who?
Makhachev?
No,
I'm gonna have to look into
Khabib's
that.
his cousin, I thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought he has a big win over somebody who's in for that camp as well.
He could have been fighting in. Maybe there's 1,000 Nurmagomedovs in Dagestan.
Oh, yeah, that's good call.
If you look at the records, maybe that's what happened there. But I do like Makhachev here. Just from that bloodline. That bloodline alone, it's a winning bloodline, Cody. Sometimes you can't go past the fact that there's a winning bloodline, and you should bet the winning bloodline. Islam Makhachev. You're gonna look back on this fight and be like, man, I can't believe I picked Adriano Martins against a guy like Makhachev.
Maybe if I see them walk into the ring and Makhachev is being cornered by a bear, I might have to rethink this. But until then, I'm leaning towards Adrian Martins ever so slightly.
All right, let's move on. We got Sergio Pettis taking on Chris Cariaso. Sergio Pettis is a minus 170 favorite with the comeback on Chris Cariaso. Plus 150. It's funny that you laughed there because that's exactly what I thought when I first looked at this line. I'm just like, I am done putting minus money on Sergio Pettis at this point in his career. Talk about a guy who's every single fight, massive favorite. That last loss
Ryan
against
Benoit.
Ryan Benoit, who hasn't fought since then. Very strange kind of matchmaking that guy hasn't been able to get a fight since then. Now I know Pettis is good, and he's got the world of potential. But we haven't seen that potential. So why would he be a minus 170 favorite against a seasoned veteran like Chris Cariaso? That's crazy. Maybe he gets the win here. Maybe he's taking this time off. He's made all of the improvements in the world. But until I see that inside of the octagon, I got to go on the other side with Chris Cariaso plus 150.
I hate myself for saying this, but I'm going Sergio Pettis. Listen,
Uh-oh.
don't. I don't like it. I don't like it as much as you do. If I could use the term broken prospect on somebody, that's the guy. Because coming in, you know what? He's a lot like Uriah Hall in the sense that he had this big shining moment, and then he can't ever live that down. In Sergio Pettis' case, no big shining moment, but he's got that last name. And because his last name is Pettis, people just automatically assume he's going to be the champion. And I'm sorry, but that's not the case. He's skilled, but he's not, the best guy in the division. I like that he left 135 and came back down to 125, more of a natural home for him. But I guess it didn't do any good against Ryan Benoit, so it's really hard to gauge it. Chris Cariaso is leaps and bounds more experience and is ranked a lot higher than him, and all that stuff for good reason. But at the end of the day, Chris Cariaso is what he is, and that's just a gatekeeper journeyman guy. He can take advantage of you if you're not the real deal. And Sergio Pettis, he's not the real deal, but I still think his skill set's good enough to beat Chris Cariaso. And at the end of the day, when you look at when you look at this last performance against Ryan Benoit, is that he's winning the fight. He's winning the fight, and then he gets caught. C'est la vie, it happens. Against the Bruce Leroy fight, he's winning the fight. Then he gets caught. C'est la vie. Things happen. He's a good fighter, man. He's got the goods. He just hasn't really been able to tie it all together. He's still young. He's still trying to live in his brother's shadow. Now his brother loses the title. Now people, they think, oh, this guy's a bum. He's still the favorite. But they've written him off. I'd like to think that he's going to center himself a little bit. He has shown in the past that he has the skills, just he's not really a game day performer. And against Chris Cariaso, he will test him, but the one thing that Chris Cariaso lacks that will really exploit this is punching power. Chris Cariaso has very little punching power. So I don't think he's got that strike to hit Sergio and hurt Sergio. And yes, he can take him down and grind him out, and that scares me. But I'd love to think that Sergio is trying to correct these deficits. He's improved on certain areas, and this may be the last time I ever say bet Sergio Pettis, because he has burned me in the past. But bet Sergio Pettis minus 170.
I can't do it. I can't do it. Just just one more little thing to add to that is like Chris Cariaso, as you're saying, gatekeeper gets put in these situations. It's like Louis Smolka. Louis Smolka. Everyone was really high on Louis Smolka.
That's a good call. That's a good
call. Chris Cariaso steals all the hype. Now, Pettis doesn't really have the same hype coming into this fight. We haven't been talking about, his return after losing to Ryan Benoit. But
people don't care, because nobody cares if he returned or not. If he would have been like, yeah, I'm done, or the UFC would have cut him, nobody would have rallied for him. They just don't care anymore. Yeah. So now it's finally like, you got to make them care.
Put up or shut up.
Put up or shut up. So we're going to give you a top 10 opponent who challenged for a title within the last 12 months. Yep. And if you can even just beat this guy.
A seasoned veteran who's faced some good guys.
It's a crossroads, really.
I'm going with Cariaso. I can't put any money on Sergio Pettis anymore.
Fair enough, man.
He's burned me too many times.
Listen, I'm just trying to.
He's just like, I was just adding him to parlays. He's just like, all right, well, he's pretty much guaranteed to win.
When you get,
I bought into the name as well. It happened to me.
You ever used you ever use like a record player and you put the vinyl on there and it sounds like crap, and then they'll tell you, you got to let it ride, man. You got to let it ride, and then you're like, and then it starts riding, and then it starts good, and it sounds real good.
It hasn't sounded very good.
Sergio Pettis, you just gotta let it ride, baby. Just get through the turbulence in the beginning, and then once he gets going, he should just get going. So, close fight, as you mentioned, could go either way, but looks like finally we're on the opposite ends of one.
We've been on the opposite side of a few of them here, but this one we seem a little bit more fervent in our belief. All right, we move from the little guys to the big guys, where we have Victor Pesta taking on Derek Lewis. Victor Pesta is a minus 145 favorite with the comeback on Lewis plus 125. I don't really know what the hell to think about this. We were talking about Ruslan Magomedov versus Sean Jordan earlier on as middling heavyweights. This is like the step below middling heavyweights. A lot of different things can happen here. What I do take from this fight is Victor Pesta in his fight against Konstantin Arokin, a fight that me and you actually picked Pesta as like a plus 270 underdog in that fight. He's got a good chin, what we learned from him in that fight.
Oh, yeah.
And he's able to employ a game plan, and that's tire this big, crazy slugger out in the first 3-4 minutes and then win rounds 2 and 3. And that's exactly what he did against Konstantin Arokin. And I suppose based on what I have seen and his ability to do that, I would lean towards Victor Pesta at minus 145. That being said, these are low-level heavyweights, and, Derek Lewis has the ability to knock out basically anybody if he connects with one of his super, super heavy looping shots. So it's a heavyweight fight. The risk's there, but I'm going to lean towards Victor Pesta at minus 145.
In terms of...
And sorry, just one more thing.
Yep.
Sorry to cut you off.
It's all good.
Lewis, we have talked about in the past many times before. This guy has sounded like he doesn't even really want to fight anymore.
I was just going to mention that. I was really just going to mention that. But a small little note on that is that, he gave an interview a little while ago where they were just like, you're working your way through the heavyweight division, what's next for you? And he was like, I don't even like fighting. He's like, I hate it. He's like, the feeling I get backstage, I hate it. I hate getting in there, and I hate fighting. The only reason I'm doing this is I got a mortgage on a house, and I just want to win 4 more fights, and then I can pay my mortgage. I'm out of here. I hate fighting. I hate it. And then he goes out and he gets smoked by Matt Mitrione. Bad. And then I think he beats Juan Potts after that. Garbage fight, let me tell you. Garbage fight. And then he loses to Sean Jordan. So now you got, okay.
And that Sean Jordan fight was a fight that he wanted to get back.
Yeah,
because he had already lost to him. So, if ever he was going to be motivated to win a fight, it was against Sean Jordan, who they had some beef with each other, and he didn't really come to perform in that fight either. So
and when he got hit by Mitrione, let me tell you, it's heavyweights. You hit the guy, he's going to go down. But it's a really short shot that puts him down. So it's like, maybe he doesn't have a chin. And if you're a heavyweight without a chin, I mean, they're all heavyweights. They can all hit you. Go, that's iffy, but it's not the end of the world. Then again, Sean Jordan, it's like, he has no ground game or cardio either. So if you're a heavyweight with no ground game, cardio, or a chin, that's just recipe for disaster. Now, what he does have is an extreme amount of power. If he hits you, you're going to go down. And in his wins, that's what happens. He hits the guy, they go down. But anybody who's able to survive the first round with him, maybe the first 2 rounds with him, he gasses himself out. So by that logic, Victor Pesta is kryptonite for a guy like this because he can take a shot, and he's a small heavyweight, to be honest with you. He's really tall, but he's not like a big, thick guy.
No,
so he moves
he comes
very
in
well.
at like 235, that type of thing.
He moves very well. He's very agile. He's very mobile. And those are the kind of things that give a guy like Derek Lewis trouble.
I think he's been getting better every single fight as well.
Absolutely.
He just doesn't
Now,
fight all that often.
See, that's the problem. We haven't really seen him in all that often. And then with Derek Lewis is that he's taken damage the last couple times we've seen him, at least in his losses. So it's hard to gauge. But one little small note I have on this is that, as we mentioned, he just wanted to win 4 more fights and then he was going to pay this mortgage off. Now is it. He's gotten 1 and 2 since he's given that interview. So it's like, I don't know where his motivation is at, but he's always trained at this like Silverback Fight Club. That's always where he's been. I was actually talking to someone the other day, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we just sent one of our heavyweight prospects to do some work over at Silverback Fight Club because it's in Texas, right?" I said, "Oh, that's good." I said, "Derek Lewis is there, isn't he?" And they said, No, he left there. His coaches are really, really, really bummed up because they figured they thought, Derek Lewis is their guy, and they've worked so hard to create him. And after the losses, he just got up and left. Now, I'm not 100% sure where he went, but I would say that's actually a positive for him. You should never leave the people that got you there. So in that regard, he's disloyal and he's gym jumping. And that's not necessarily a positive. But the flip side to that is that his cardio was his biggest issue. And he doesn't have any bodies at the gym he was at. So if he's able to go somewhere else, get some bodies, correct some of those mistakes, then he could win this fight. I'm straight money line going Victor Pesta. But as we're going to get to in a little bit, the counter moves in DraftKings, he's the kind of guy that could very well get a first-round stoppage.
He is the guy that if
power.
you want to get into, if you're going for a big tournament where you need a guy who's going to ice somebody early, rolling the dice on a guy like Derek Lewis, big tournament play, is the way to go. Yeah, I know where you're going with that. Somebody actually asked us the other day if there's a difference between, cash game lineups in MMA and big tournament. This is the exact type of situation, right? Like if you're going to go into a tournament and, there's 3,000-4,000 people in it. Well, you're going to need those early finishes. So the risk that you would take would probably pick like Derek Lewis. You'd pick, either Magomedov or Sean Jordan in that spot. I would probably go with Jordan in that spot.
Maybe.
Because Jordan has been finishing guys recently, whereas Magomedov typically goes to decision.
Sean Jordan also has a questionable chin, though. But yeah, I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
I'm feeling what you're saying.
And yeah, you would pick a guy like Tumanov. Like that's the type of team that you want to put together if you're doing a big tournament. Cash games, you may want to play a little bit safer because the risk may not be worth the reward if there's only like 3-4 people in this little
if it's
cash game
if it's heads up, I just try to get the win because at the end of the day, if he's got 5 people on his team and one of them loses and 4 of them win, that hurts
and if he's taking risks on guys like that, most of the time he's not going to win those types of
because that's the
cash
flip
games.
side. Buyer beware. If Derek Lewis wins and it's a first round finish, that's great. If Derek Lewis loses, it's going to be a second round stoppage. It kills you.
Exactly.
It kills you. So just be aware.
All right, and finally we've got Sage Northcutt taking on Francisco Trevino. Sage Northcutt's a -340 favorite with the comeback on Trevino, +280. Who do you got here?
Okay, drum roll, please. I like the one guy, but I hate the value on it. Sage Northcutt, 19 years old. I get that he looks like a stud. Let me tell you. He did look good in that legacy fight, and then the UFC puts a little feature out looking for the next guy. And Dana White circles him, and they talk about him, and they go see him in a fight. And I get that. That's all good hype. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, let's realistically look at it. You got a 19-year-old kid who's still very green, and he's got the goods to beat a guy like Francisco Trevino simply because Trevino is so slow, man, like extremely slow. And Northcutt's extremely fast. And that should be his path to victory.
And Trevino's a striker by trade as well.
Well, they're both strikers. That's
No, I know, but I mean, like he's a striker by trade going up against a much faster, much more technical, younger striker. Yeah. And this is both of these guys are actually from from the state of Texas, but it seems like this is a setup fight for Northcutt. Especially after Trevino's last performance against Johnny Case, where he just looked awful. He was getting lit up on the feet, and then when Case was able to take him to the ground on top of that, he just looked like a fish out of water.
But important to note in that fight is that Johnny Case is a young, hot prospect with speed and some decent skills, right? And then he literally beat the crap out of Francisco Trevino, but did not finish him, and didn't really look that close to finishing him. In fact, Why would you take a guy to the ground if you are lighting them up standing and they've got nothing to offer you? Because you can't take them out standing and you're like, I'm done with this. My hands are starting to hurt.
Yeah.
He's hitting me the odd time. I'm just going to take it to the ground. You get a similar feeling here with Sage Northcutt. Not that he's going to take him down. It's that Francisco Trevino has shown that he's very durable. I think his one UFC wins against Henry Forte, and I mean, that's a good guy as well. So you got Trevino. He's 1-1 in the UFC. He's a lot older. He's more experienced. He's got a Muay Thai background, and he's just that older fighter that you're going to come in and you're going to fight this guy. I truthfully believe that he's going to have the durability to kind of stay in there with Sage Northcutt. Sage Northcutt probably going to get the win. Is it going to be the most spectacular thing like people are expecting? No, and I think that's why the line's a little out of hand. People have a huge amount of hype for him. He might be the next Sergio Pettis, man. He might be the next guy that's like, damn, I saw this guy in a legacy fight against an opponent who was 23-14. He's awesome. It's like, well, beat a Rocky Johnson's not exactly a high-level competition here, guys.
Or he could be the next Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Now, but I think that this type of matchup sets him up well that he should probably win. But is Francisco Trevino Dan Stitkin? That's the real question here.
No, and
you know what I mean?
And that's what I'm getting at.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I wouldn't bet Sage Northcutt for the -340 just because I don't really like it. But I got this irking feeling that he's going to win in decision. And I think most people, bookies included, are going to bet on Sage Northcutt inside the distance because he's shown great finishing abilities. But I'm just gonna bet on the fact that Trevino is durable, that he's gonna take a beating in this fight, but he's gonna last the 15 minutes. So I don't know off the top of my head what Sage Northcutt by decision is, but I can tell you it's gonna be infinitely better than this -340 you're gonna get. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
All right, I actually like Sage Northcutt in DraftKings and Countermove this week. I think he's got a good matchup. He has a potential to finish. But I can understand where you're coming from at -340. Obviously, the price may be a little bit too steep when it's a 19-year-old kid fighting on the regional scene. We haven't seen him up against the highest level of competition, so who knows what hand we're being dealt. So for DraftKings this week, if you're not familiar, sorry, I guess I should always do this little precursor. If you're not familiar with Fantasy MMA, you obviously haven't been listening. We've got Fantasy MMA. You've got basically you're looking for performance. It's not about who's going to win. It is a bit to a degree, but you're looking for people who are going to dominate their opponent. Ideally, get early finishes. Some cards, the finishes are easier to point out than others. There are some finishes on this card, but actually for my DraftKings and Countermove teams, I kind of avoided those ones because
they could go either way?
Because they could go either way. It's like, when I was talking earlier about Sean Jordan versus Magomedov, there could be a finish there, but I think if the finish
you're lining
is
up
happen,
like cash game lineups.
I'm kind of making cash game lineups when I give out these teams here. But let's get right into it. I got Rose Namajunas 10-6. I think she has a good chance. She has a big disparity in her grappling ability as opposed to Angela Hill. Maybe Angela Hill's been working on that, but until I actually see it inside the octagon, that's the only thing I can really go on. So Rose Namajunas, 10-6, a little bit expensive, but I'm able to afford it. Sage Northcutt, 10-5. I think he's the better technical striker against a guy who's been durable, but extremely hittable. So the opportunity for him is there for him to shine. This is a matchup I think was handpicked if they really want to promote this guy moving forward. So Sage Northcutt, 10-5. I like him a lot more in Countermove, which I'll get to a little bit later, but I picked him for my DraftKings team as well. Yair Rodriguez, another situation where I think that they've set it up for Yair Rodriguez to win this fight. Daniel Hooker, his only loss in the UFC, coming against one Maximo Blanco, aggressive striker with a wacky style who's going to keep coming forward. Yep. That's what Yair Rodriguez is going to do, and 10-4. Again, maybe a little bit expensive, but I think that they want him to shine in this spot. Islam Makhachev, because I'm a Khabib Nurmagomedov mark, I suppose you could say. Anything that Khabib touches turns to gold. Or falls apart, because that's basically, he's just been broken for the last year and a half now. But 9,700, I have to try to find guys with a little bit better, or lower prices, better value. So Islam Makhachev is the guy I went with here. And Jessica Evil Eye, 8,700, strictly because I'm basically out of money at this point. But I think, as I said earlier in the fight, that I think that this should be closer to a pick-em between her and Jessica Pena, and I wouldn't be surprised if Jessica Evil Eye gets the job done. So 8-7, I don't think that many people are going to have eye on their team unless they've spent all their money really heavily early on. So that's my squad. What about yours?
I start off with Sage Northcutt, 10,500. Once again, I mean, you're giving him a hand-picked opponent. He's from Texas. You went to a Texas, regional show specifically to find somebody to fight on this card in Texas. You found that, and he's 19 years old, and they're very impressed with him. They don't want this 19-year-old kid to go get smoked out. They're looking for, okay, who's somebody matches up good against? Well, Dana, this is the UFC. He's such a young kid. There's going to be some issues in all the fights. Okay, but Trevino's real slow, right? Oh, the slowest of the slow. Well, then give him something like that. And I think, if he knocks him out, great. I don't personally see it happening. But even if he doesn't knock him out, then he's going to style on him and just rack up points. And if he does knock him out, this is MMA, anything can happen, then I'll definitely want him on my team. Albert Tumanov, that's the great mistake that I saw in your team, is that you didn't have Albert Tumanov. 10,300, I think that's an infinitely better choice than Rose Namajunas. And this is a guy who's got the goods, man. Once again, if for some reason Alan Jouban's chin actually holds up the way it has in his other previous performances in which he gets dropped, then it's still going to be just points galore for Albert Tumanov. And if the chin doesn't hold up the way I believe it won't hold up, then he's going to get a first or second round finish, I believe, and then that's pretty good as far as I'm concerned.
What was it, though? The fight against Ildemar Alcantara that
split decision
that he was
loss,
taken
his UFC
down
debut,
and outgrappled.
His UFC debut,
if he
170 pounds. Come on,
Jouban
man.
knows not to get into a firefight with Tumanov,
Jouban doesn't have the wrestling or the black belt to hold him down the way that
he's able to take him down.
Ildemar Alcantara was coming down from 185. Tumanov was going up. You know what I mean? It's just, it wasn't a good dynamic. But anyways, regardless.
Jouban's got some good grappling, though. That's the worry I have.
Play devil's advocate all you want, but your Rose Namajunas team is screwed, and my team with Albert Tumanov
I don't think I would go as far as
flourishing, dude, flourishing.
Yeah, we'll see.
Then I went Islam Makhachev. That may be one to switch out, but as you mentioned, I mean, I think
you're saying that you're leaning towards Adriano Martins there.
Yeah, but $9,700. I need guys that are going to be cheap at this point. You're going to see what happens when after my next two selections. But he's priced well at $9,700, and he's the kind of guy that he's got that brute ground game that if he gets you to the ground and he can threaten with some stuff, I don't necessarily mind him. Then you got Sean Jordan with $9,500. Once again, Sean Jordan's is in a situation here where if he gets hit, maybe he gets dropped. But his opponent, not really known for his power, Sean Jordan has looked good as of late. And with these Mendling heavyweights, anything can happen. I think that because he's been knocked out in the past, he likes to get to his grappling a little more these days, and I prefer that much from him. He was good when he was at Greg Jackson's. He appears to be better at American Top Team, so I'm not saying he's the difference between good and great. He is not great. He likely will never be great, but he's better, and that's got to be a step in the right direction. Now, here's the issue. I got $10,000 left over, and that's a lot of money. I could go Ryan Bader for $9,300. I go Chris Cariaso for $9,200. Daniel Hooker, maybe Bogatinov. I'm going to take Hooker and Cariaso out right off the get-go because I don't think Cariaso gets the win, and Hooker's going to be in a tough fight, obviously, against Yair Rodriguez. With Bader, $9,300, that's going to leave you $700 left over. But we basically broke this fight down pretty well earlier. But the one thing I got to throw on to that is, let's say you're training at a gym, right? And you've got a manager who happens to own the gym. And he's just like, oh, Ryan, we got this upcoming fight for you. Oh, okay, no problem. Oh, yeah, guys, sorry. Shoulders hurt. Okay, no problem, Ryan. Oh, hey, Rashad, we got this other fight for you. Yeah, okay, yeah, but money. Oh, yep, no problem. And then at what point is he like, you guys are shitty managers, man. I'm getting another man. You're pulling out of all these fights yourself, man. What did the manager do wrong? Did he not get you a watch deal? Did you lose a bunch of sponsorships when the Reebok deal came in? I don't know. But you turn on your manager who owns your gym. You know what that sounds like? Trouble in paradise. Sounds like trouble in paradise to me, man. Now you're supposed to be coming in and they're all looking at you like, oh, yeah, there's the guy that apparently we weren't doing a good job. Do you see everybody else in this room? Yeah, well, 90% of them are managed by us because we're not doing a good job. I could see that playing with a guy. He's got a lot of ring rust. Who knows?
Hey, if this is a tournament play and you're going to be going with Ryan Bader, I think not too many people are going to have Ryan Bader. So if he does get the job done against Rashad Evans, you're probably in a good spot.
And then with the money saved, if you take Ryan Bader, that's $9,300. You're going to have $700 left over. Maybe you want to have a look at upgrading Islam Makhachev. But that's totally your call. I mean, there's definitely options to play around with, but this is a fairly cheap lineup.
All right, and let's move on to counter move here, where I found some of the prices were kind of low for the guys that the guys that I like. So Yair Rodriguez, $4,500.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Islam Makhachev, $4,500. Sage Northcutt, $4,700. It's like counter move knows something that we don't know, or the opposite. Either way, I got all three of those people on my team. I was actually struggling to spend my money on counter moves. So then I have Rose Namajunas. Again, I think this fight goes to the ground. Angela Hill has proven that she is a fish out of water down there, and until we see those improvements, maybe this is the fight that we see those improvements in her game, but not willing to bet on that. So 5,200 Rose Namajunas, and I've got my boy DC, 5-round fight, and I really had to spend some money. I had to spend some money. I think Daniel Cormier gets the job done. He may not even be the highest scoring person on the whole card, even in a 5-round fight, but I think his persistence and ability to grind probably makes it worth it. 5,600, I just had the money to spend, so I took DC.
You know, I find it very interesting that you have so much money to spend, but no Albert Tumanov. That's the trick here, people. I'm going to start with my lineup from the bottom up because I had the same problem.
4,800 is cheap on Tumanov too.
Yeah.
I know, but there's so it's so cheap.
I had the same problem because I started out with Derek Lewis for the same reason that if this guy wins, it'll be an empathetic fashion, and he's $4,600. Then you get Sage Northcutt, $4,700. Albert Tumanov, $4,800. I had so much money left over. I was like, take my money. So I took Rose Namajunas and Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier, $5,600. I don't like the value, but I had so much money left over that why not take the guy that's in a 5-rounder? I don't think he finishes Alexander Gustafsson, but I think he's able to, give him a good grind in, land some takedowns, land some strikes, 5 rounds. Hopefully it adds up. Rose Namajunas, that's the one I'm not completely sold on, but I had a lot of money left over. She fit the bracket of someone who, for the amount of money I had, could score a good amount.
Let the record show that Cody has historically been a bit of a Rose Namajunas hater.
Well, personality-wise, she's a phony. But look-wise, she's like, at least, you know what? Everyone's got their own style of what they like. Yeah. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, she is gorgeous.
Okay.
But she's a phony, a big fat. Well, she's not fat. She's very petite, but
sorry,
phony.
I cut you off.
Now I'm thinking about how hot she is.
I cut you off to make sure that everybody listening knows that you have something against her and you don't like her. So there it is.
Well, I also got things against Pat Barry, so you know what I mean. It's just a biased opinion, but yeah, like I said, $5,200. I think she fits the mold of somebody that even if she doesn't get the finish, and I'm not sold that she gets the finish, Paul. I'm really not. Even if she doesn't. She's got a good ground game. She's got a good striking game. If she's made the necessary adjustments, I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm probably going to drop her off my team. That's bad value, Rose Namajunas. Don't take Rose Namajunas. I can't even get up for this. She's going to lose. She's going to lose, and if she doesn't lose, I don't think it'll be some $5,200 worthy performance. So I might have to slightly rethink that. However, if you do take Northcutt and Tumanov for super cheap, you can afford a lot of good things on countermove.
All right. Well, it's funny that you backtracked on Rose. I'm just saying that. But anyway, let's, we're just about out of time here. But before we go...
You already know my pick of the week.
We have to give you our picks of the week. And Cody's pick is Albert Tumanov. So just elaborate on that one last time.
Okay, they call him Albert Einstein Tumanov. Mostly because his first name's Albert, that it seems like the correct thing to give him to. But also just honestly, he's a smart guy. He's a thinker. As I mentioned, master of sport in boxing over in his native Russia. Young. Becoming the total package. He's had a couple fights pull out, so that's not the greatest thing in the world. But one of those was Andrew Todd Hunter. Andrew Todd Hunter was supposed to fight him, miss weight by 20 pounds, and the fight never happened. So it's not like you got Tumanov on the sideline that's getting hurt here. He's not hurt. He's young. He's hungry. He wants this. Jouban's a little wild. He's a little open. His style plays into the style of a guy like Albert Tumanov. And I like Jouban, don't get me wrong. This will either be fight of the night because it'll be so fun for 2-3 rounds, or it'll just be a performance of the night for Tumanov because it'll be really fun until he completely ices him. But I don't like Jouban's odds here. I really don't. So pick of the week, Tumanov. And above all that, he's like minus 220, man. That is good value as far as I'm concerned.
All right, I'm going to give you 2 picks. 2 guys that I think are going to get the job done here. First, I'm going to go with Victor Pesta. Victor Pesta is not
going for it. Yeah, I like it.
Not a very
sexy
sexy pick by any stretch of the imagination. But we saw in his last fight against Konstantin Arokin, which I think this is a very similar style. It's a very similar matchup that he's got. You just have to avoid Derek Lewis's barrage in the first 4 minutes, and he proved against Konstantin Arokin, who is probably equally as powerful as one Derek Lewis, that he's able to do that, and then he's able to just tire you out and grind you down, and that's what he did for rounds 2 and 3. So I'm going to go with him because it's a similar matchup, and we talked about earlier, Derek Lewis doesn't even seem like he really wants to fight anymore. And I'm going to go with Islam Makhachev. Bloodlines, baby. Bloodlines all day long. This guy, Khabib's family. Anybody who's part of Khabib's family is okay by me. So minus 105. Martins has beaten Rustam Khabilov. I'll give you that. That is a good win if you're going to be going up against a guy like Makhachev. But as I was saying, that was the most ridiculous night ever in the history of the UFC.
One of.
Ivan Batman George was the only favorite to come through that night against Josh Shockley. So
you know what's crazy?
It was a
Ivan
wild
George
night.
is favorite against anybody.
Yeah, never. That was like
weird.
the one spot that he actually was. So I think that maybe that was just a bit of a strange one. He's got a win over Juan Manuel Puig. Well, like a wet paper bag could probably get a win over Juan Manuel Puig as well. So Islam Makhachev is going to get the job done, and he's a slight underdog at this point as well. Any last final thoughts here? Any dogs? Anything that you like or want to preach out to the people here?
Yeah, Rose Namajuanis is a phony, okay? Take that one to the bank.
You know who's not a phony? Adam Rapkowski. We're going to thank him for doing all the dirty work behind the glass. Always appreciate Director A-Rap doing his good work. Always appreciate Cody Saftik breaking down the fights with me. Both of those guys. I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.